So we're on week 3 of this epic ongoing battle between Ableton and Bitwig to see if Bitwig can completely replace Ableton for everything I need inside of production. Now, in the previous video, we covered a CPU stress test to see who could handle more of a workload. And in the 2 videos before that, we went over and compared some features and how each program executes certain things we're trying to accomplish. But in this video, I want to focus more on a producer, singer-songwriter aspect and talk about something extremely important, which is recording and tracking in vocals. Now, one of these 2 programs completely dominates the other one with the method that we're going to talk about in this video. But before we get to that method, I want to give you a little backstory about my experience with tracking vocals. So about 8 years ago, I signed on with a publishing deal with a company out of the UK called Global Media. They own some radio stations like Capital and Heart, and they came over to the States and wanted to start an artist development program. I was lucky enough to sign on with them as a producer to do artist development, and one of the groups that was assigned to me was a 4-piece boy band called Far Young. Long story short, with Far Young, after producing 2 full albums for them and releasing the first single, which will be linked down below, the band broke up. This happens more than you might think with artist development, but the period of working with this 4-piece boy band and producing 2 albums with them was one of the most influential and educational periods for me with vocal production. Easily, sessions can get anywhere from 50 to 100 plus vocal tracks when you look at stacking up all the leads, the backgrounds, and the harmonies. And there's 2 main goals we're trying to focus on during this process. One is we're trying to create an inspiring environment where the artist or yourself, if you're tracking your own vocals, can hear the song ready for the radio, ready for release. It sounds as close to polish as possible, even when you're just tracking in these vocals. The second part we want to focus on is maintaining the speed of the session. When an artist or yourself are tracking vocals, you may have ideas coming in or you're feeling it and you want to just bang out those takes and keep things moving forward. So if you spend any time setting anything up or looking for a certain plugin or anything of that sort, you may fall out of the creative mindset that the artist is in or that yourself is in. You want to stay in a creative zone and not really get distracted into a technical zone. So while producing the songs for Far Young, we also worked with an amazing top-liner singer-songwriter by the name of Pooh Bear out of LA. If you don't know him, Google him. He's probably one of the best songwriters and top-liners for modern pop music. Now, he works really fast. He's going to be tracking in top lines and then also vocals at the same time and really telling you exactly where to place it. Put that as the lead, put this as a double, actually switch the double to the lead and take the lead and put that as a backing. So you have to be able to navigate extremely quick so you keep that artist or yourself in that forward momentum and that forward mindset. And this is where the template comes into play. Having a proper vocal template set up allows you to quickly navigate. Now, at this time period, I was using Logic to track everything in. So in this video, we're gonna check out that Logic template, how it works and how it is so beneficial to maintaining that creative environment inside of the studio session and also maintaining your speed while you're tracking in someone else or yourself so you don't really miss any sort of inspirational moments. Then we're going to take a look at recreating this vocal production template inside of Ableton and Bitwig. See if they can actually recreate the same workflow and see which one truly shines, because there's one little thing that really separates these 2. But before we take a look at the comparison between Ableton and Bitwig, let's take a look at Logic, the vocal tracking template, and to see how it works and how we're going to recreate that in the other 2 programs. So here we are inside of Logic, and let's take a look at this vocal tracking template and what makes it so beneficial and efficient to tracking vocals. Well, at the top we have the reference track. This is where we're going to just drop in our instrumental that we will be tracking the vocals to. Then below that we have the mic always on track. Now this is where the microphone input signal is going to be coming in, and we are always going to leave this to record enabled. On this track, I'll typically only have something along the lines of auto-tune and maybe a little reverb so the artist can hear some pitch correction and then also hear a little bit of reverb to keep them in the mood. Then below that, we have our vocal stacks, and this is where we're going to be taking the audio regions that we're recording in and just dropping them down into the appropriate channels. Now, let's take a look at what's involved with one of these vocal stacks. So for Chris's vocal lead, here we see that we already have a de-esser, an EQ, and this is set up specifically for his voice based on the microphone we're using, and compression. So when we play back, we're going to hear the vocals having compression, they're mixed accordingly, and they're already level set and panned based on what track we drop them into. So the lead is up the center with the higher volume, the center double is down the center with the lower volume, the left double is over to the left, the right over to the right, an ad-lib track and an effects track with some heavy saturation or a pitch changing plugin on there so we can add a cool little backing effect really quickly without having to search for any of our plugins. So the way this is going to work is up here on the mic always on track. We're going to have it armed to record all the time. I'm just not in this video because I kind of get this weird loop through on the recording. So let's say we track in some vocals. Typically, we're going to do as many takes as it takes in order for us to feel confident that we are able to come up with a good comp of these vocals. In this hypothetical situation, we've done 4 takes and we feel that it's in there somewhere. A lot of the times I'll use the final take, the last take, as the playback, and then go back and grab little sections from the previous takes if I feel that they were better than the last take. A lot of times the last take is the best. So regardless if we're going to do some quick comping on the fly or if we're just going to take this final take 4, the beauty about Logic is that all of these takes are actually contained inside of this audio region. So we can make some quick adjustments on the fly, close it down, and simply just drag it in to where it's going to sit in that mix. And now when we play this back, the artist or yourself, if you're tracking your own vocals, you're going to hear more of a polished playback because we already have it being sent to some reverb. We already have some EQ on there and some compression, and it's fitting in the mix a lot better than if it was just a dry vocal sounding like a demo vocal. Then we're going to go ahead and then just, let's say, track in our double. So there's our double that we tracked in. And again, since Logic is holding all of these different takes within this single region, we can just simply grab it and drag it down to the appropriate area. This also comes in handy because a lot of times after doing a couple of run-throughs, your voice or the singer's voice is more warmed up and you'll end up using, let's say, a double as the lead because you're more in the zone, you have a little bit more vibe going on. This template makes it really easy because we could then just take the lead, drop it down to, let's say, the center double, and then take what we just recorded and drop it into the lead. Again, when you play this back, it's going to keep you more inspired because you're hearing the vocals fitting in the mix like the song was ready for release or ready for the radio. So let's say we're done with Chris's vocal session. Jay's going to jump onto the microphone. So we're simply going to take Chris, drop him below Jay, keep it clean, open up Jay, then do the same thing, track in all of Jay's vocals. If we're going to do some little quick edits on the fly, just so it sounds better, then just drop it into the appropriate channel, whether it's a lead, if he just wants to do some ad-libs. Now, the cool thing about this template workflow is it not only keeps the artist inspired, but let's say Jay had a really quick idea about a pitch down ad-lib, he tracked that in, we can simply drag that down to the effects and then turn on the appropriate effect. If he wanted it pitched down, we already have little altar boy on here and we can just slam that down accordingly and fine tune it. Then that little pitch shift effect ad-lib is already in the track, ready to go on playback, set at approximately a decent level so it's not overbearing. This template workflow just really shines to keep yourself or the artist you're working with in that mindset of creativity. The biggest thing to try and avoid when you're tracking in vocals is getting distracted by the technical aspect. So if you set up a template like this ahead of time, majority of the technical stuff is already done and you can stay in that creative flow tracking in vocal ideas and not have to worry about searching for plugins, adding tracks, everything of that sort. A lot of times in bigger sessions, what we'll end up having is we'll having a stack for the lead for each individual artist, and then we'll also end up having, let's say, a backing stack that has harmonies or maybe additional ad-libs. And again, the beauty of Logic is that while we're tracking everything in on this single channel up here, all of these takes are contained inside of the audio region. And this is really important because now we're going to jump over and look at Ableton and Bitwig and see how they handle this sort of recording situation and see which one comes out ahead. Now, here we are with Ableton on the left and Bitwig on the right. And let's take a look at how this actual workflow works inside of these two programs. Now I've gone ahead and tracked in 4 takes inside of each one of them, and as you can see, the template is the exact same. We have the reference track on top where our instrumental would go in. We have our always on channel right here, and then we have the vocal stack down below where the bus has a whole bunch of effects, and then we have all the different layers below that with the appropriate levels and appropriate panning. So inside of Ableton, when I track in my takes, in order to see them, I'm going to right click and go to show take lanes, or I can use the shortcut here, and I can see all the different takes right here. Now inside of Bitwig, if I select this and then just hit E to open the editor down below and change it from audio event into comping, I can then see all of the different takes included inside of this audio clip. Now I can go through both of them and start, let's say, highlighting and doing a quick comp on the fly. Then over here, we simply just swipe the specific region and it's going to make the changes. You can kind of see the changes happening up here, but we have everything happening down here. Ableton, we have everything happening up here. So let's say we've gone ahead and done our basic rough comp really quickly, and we're gonna move on to, let's say, recording from the lead into a double. Now, this is where I've always been frustrated with Ableton, and if I'm honest, I never track vocals in Ableton. In Ableton, I would always just do all of the music production, and then I'd import that instrumental into Logic and use the template that we just saw. Here's why. Let's say we just do some basic comping inside of Ableton, and we're ready to bring this down. So first off, everything is individual right here. So let's say we grab all of this and we want to drag it down into here. Well, it brought over the actual final comp, but if we look here, all of those individual takes are still stuck inside of this track level right here, which means that I can't go back later and adjust any part of this comp. I'm pretty much only dealing with what I drug down. So I started asking myself, is there a possible workaround if I wanted to use this workflow inside Ableton? So my first idea was to just select all of these, copy and paste them in, hoping that it will take the composite and all these individual take lanes and paste them in to this track right here. But what happens is when we paste this in, it actually puts all the takes on the other tracks. So that won't work. So I thought, what if we actually show the take lanes here and then just paste them in, but it does the same thing. So unfortunately, inside of Ableton, there really is no way to do this workflow from this template, which in my experience is the best way to track vocals, because you already have half of the mixing done on the vocals, and on playback it sounds so much better and you can just move very quickly and keep your creative flow going. Now, if you want to do this inside of Ableton, what you would have to do is select to record onto this individual track, and then if there were any effects that you had on this track, you would have to bypass them, record in, and then go ahead and turn all the effects back on. When you're then going to do a double, you have to go down, you have to arm this track, bypass any effects on there, and then record into it. It is doable, but it's just not enjoyable from my point of view. However, when we jump over and look at Bitwig, since inside of Bitwig, all these different takes are contained inside of this clip right here, I can just simply drag it and it doesn't matter where I put it because all of the different takes are just included in this clip right here, which makes it very quick and easy, just like working in Logic, but I don't have to be switching in between my DAWs. Now, that being said, the one thing I actually do like inside of Bitwig a little bit more than Logic is the separation between all the different takes and just the audio clip over here. So I can just leave it in this view, come down here, do a quick swipe, and then just drag it accordingly to where I want it. Where inside of Logic, if I wanted to do any sort of swiping, I do have to come up, expand it, swipe away, and then close it again. So I find that this little split workflow, actually, I'm starting to prefer this more. I've only done a couple of sessions tracking inside of Bitwig, but since I am able to completely recreate my Logic vocal tracking template workflow, I find that using Bitwig is just a seamless transition in there, and I'm finding that I actually enjoy having this little separate window down here with comping already set up, and it just makes it nice and quick and easy and faster. So with all that being said, I have to honestly say that I've always stayed away from tracking inside of Ableton. It just feels cumbersome with the fact that all of your takes are essentially just stuck on the track that they were recorded on, and you can't move around the blocks and keep all those takes contained inside of whether you call it an audio clip or an audio region. They're stuck on the track here, and it's just always made me shy away from doing any sort of big tracking inside of Ableton. And up until trying out Bitwig, my solution to that was always just using Logic for doing all of my vocal sessions, all of my vocal tracking, even doing the vocal mixing inside of there, and then just taking that stem or those stems from that vocal session, putting them back in Ableton for the final mix. But now with Bitwig, I feel that I can simply just do all of my vocal tracking in its own session. And since we can't have multiple sessions open, you could then track all of your vocals inside of one session, then just simply select everything you want to bring over, copy this, open the other session, and just paste it directly in for your mixing phase. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that comparison, but for me, the clear winner is Bitwig because it keeps all the takes contained inside of an audio clip, and I can easily and quickly drag that into the different channels and place it where I want. And I also like the fact that on the top I see the clip and at the bottom I see all of the comping. It makes it even quicker when I'm comparing it to Logic. Then the fact that if I'm doing most of my production inside of Bitwig already, and I can just simply do all my vocal tracking in a vocal project, copy all those tracks, and then go over to the other project, activate the audio engine, and paste that in, it eliminates me having to, say, bounce out stems from Logic into the final mix session. It just adds a more complete solution. Biggest frustration with Ableton, and the reason why I've never fully adapted it for vocal tracking, is the fact that all of those takes simply stay inside of the track that they were recorded on, and there's not really an easy, smooth way to move them from one track to another track. So for me, I've never really gotten along with Ableton for tracking. I've always gone back to Logic to do all my tracking, but now with Bitwig, I feel like I can keep the tracking and the production of the track within the same program and then just copy and paste the tracks in between the sessions. Now, if you have your own tips on how to track in vocals, please leave a comment down below and maybe your tips will help somebody else out if they have questions about how to properly track in vocals. Now, in next week's video, we are going to refocus on some creative features, but look at it from the track production point of view and not the vocal tracking point of view. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the little subscribe button down below. We truly appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, there is a Zounds link down below where you can buy a bunch of gear. A little tiny bit comes back to the channel, really helps us out. Cool thing about Zounds is they don't run a credit check and you can finance almost anything on the website, so you can get your gear today, pay down the line. And with all that out of the way, this is Create, Educate, and Inspire. My name is Stu. As we always sign off, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Let me know in the comment down below if you're going to implement this vocal tracking template technique, and go make something cool.